All right, Troy, you're good to go. I will mute everybody and I let them know that
Okay.
you're welcome to chat questions and I'll kind of watch the chat for you. Do you want us to bother you while presenting or do you want to hold the questions to the end?
Go ahead and, well, if they've got questions, just
Ask
let me
away.
know, and I'd rather
Awesome.
tackle them as we go, because we're gonna be talking about things,
Great. So guys, y'all feel free to
and I'm
unmute
still waiting for.
yourselves and ask Troy questions or just chat them and I can ask him questions. So appreciate it.
Okay. Well, hopefully that means the slideshow is starting.
The
I
circle.
tried to go in and turn everything else off on my. Yes, the circle of life. I've been dealing with a lot of that lately. Um, but let's while we're waiting for that to start, I'm Troy Lipke. I think I'm froze.
We can still hear you, Troy.
Oh, okay, good, good. I'm glad I didn't say anything. I'm Troy Lipke. I'm the county extension agent here with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service. Um, I hope most of you. I hope I know most of you. If not, what extension is a way to get information out to the public that we have at AgriLife. So um, today we're gonna talk about rain gardens and what the benefits of using rain gardens are. So as that first slide showed, I asked about mosquitoes and why we worry about mosquitoes. Well, normally when we have standing water, we have an issue with mosquitoes. So one way to deal with that is to do a rain garden. It's basically the easiest way to talk about it is it's a shallow depression in your landscape already that we can now turn from a spot where water stands and collects and we have issues with to a garden that we don't have to worry about taking care of by adding a lot of water, because it's going to have access. We're going to build basically a small aquifer for those plants to help with that. And it's going to allow that water to not become runoff and go down into the streams, but it is going to benefit our landscape and the aquifer and everything all at one time. So this is not a rain garden. This is a pond. I've had people ask me about that, and we have to make those distinctions. A rain garden, you will not have water standing for an excessive period of time. We try to make it so that it's 24 to 36 hours, and then you don't see the water on top of the soil anymore. It's starting to work its way down and going through the water cycle with the plants. Um, well, that picture went, oh, here we go. This also is not a rain garden. This is a stormwater catchment system. Um, and these are set up specifically by engineers to deal with stormwater. Um, so if we can help make our system work better for us, we're going to put less into these engineering feats, and we can take care of that. So where's our runoff water coming from? Why are we worrying about construction of a rain garden? Well, our landscapes, we all know we have runoff, especially if we live in the hill country where there's very little soil. That doesn't take a lot for us to get runoff. Any of our parking lots that we have or buildings or hard surfaces will create excessive amounts of runoff whenever that happens. And what it does is it stops the groundwater infiltration. All of these that are running this way, instead of going into the aquifer, this all now is going through the stormwater system into our creeks, and we're getting issues that way. So when it comes to what our system used to be, on the right part or the left-hand side is the way it was before we developed our modern systems. So 50% of the water went back into the ground and into the groundwater system. 40% went up through transpiration in our plants and a natural cycle to put water back up into the clouds. And then 10% was runoff. And that was extra to help put water into the rivers, but most of the rivers were being filled by our creeks, because the creeks were actually running and stuff that way. So we turn around and we build all this hard surface because, well, we like our stuff. We need a place to park our car. We need a road to drive the car on. We like our house to be dry and watertight. So we've changed the water cycle, and now almost 55% of all water that falls turns into runoff water. So that's why we have all this flooding issues when it comes to our storms that we have now. Plus the fact that our water system, or our system, has been changed with our weather cycles. So when we get those big rainstorms, we're putting all that water to the creeks in the stormwater system instead of back into the ground, which is why our aquifers and our creeks are in shortage. Other things we have to worry about: when we have all this runoff, you're going to get fertilizers, you're going to get pesticides, there's going to be sediment that's going to go. Why do we worry about pet waste? Because that's excess nitrogen and phosphorus that's being put into our stormwater system. And then of course you got all your normal stuff off the roads and your debris. You know, you look at every creek and there's limbs and branches and discarded trash that people have put, and all of that is now causing issues with our stormwater systems. And then that goes into our rivers, and we wonder why we have high nitrogen and bacteria loads in the rivers. Well, a lot of it comes down to pet and wildlife waste, along with some of it is from our farmers also. So it's a three-pronged approach when it comes to animal waste. But then you have all the other stuff that we're worrying about. So what are our benefits? Well, by building a rain garden, we can reduce that amount of water that is turning into runoff. That reduces the load on our stormwater treatment plants and how much they're trying to process and stuff that way. It's allowing more recharge into the groundwater system. All those plants help buffer our temperatures. I mean, if you've ever been out into an area where there's a lot of planting, it's always cooler because of the absorption of temperatures. And when they're off-gassing through transpiration, they're off-gassing that water vapor. That helps cool the air. And then it looks good. I mean, who doesn't like to have nice flowers and plants in their yard? I would love to have more in my yard, but in the small area I live in right now, everything we're growing is in pots, so I can only do so much. Other things to consider: we're gonna try to restore natural functions. We need to work on reducing runoff, reducing erosion. So we're gonna put that in there. It creates wildlife habitat. It's going to look beautiful. We can make it cost effective because it's going to be a garden we're not going to have to put a lot of inputs into. It's going to naturally get them. The only time you really need to water a rain garden is maybe in late July, early August, just because we probably haven't had water for a number of weeks to months at that point. So some of those plants that are in the lower levels might need some more water to help keep them going through. But we wanna retrofit a site and make it work in that area. Um, so how does this work? Well, everything runs into this depression, and in this depression we have put in a layer of pebble rock, pea gravel. Then we put in a layer of soil. Then we put our plants in. We have our berms to catch the water, and what that allows is the water to work its way down through the cycles. It's below the water surface. The plants are taking it up, and you have a larger root zone for them in because they're going to get into that pea gravel and everything that way. So and then when all that stuff goes into there, we let bacteria and the microbes and that are going to break it down and filter it out of our water so that the water going through is going to have a greater chance of being purified before it goes down into the groundwater system. So it can be difficult though. I mean, if we live in Guadalupe County, we have a lot of soil. It's pretty easy to build this area. The one we put in out here at the extension office, well, we had to use some big equipment to build it. This picture just kind of shows how a rain garden is going to work and what we kind of need. So the water comes down and it comes off the downspouts, and we're going to have it go in. We've dug a 6-inch hole for all that water to collect in. We put in 3 to 4 inches of pea gravel in there. It could be up to, depending on if you go down 8 inches, you can have 6 inches of pea gravel, depending on your berm. Some of the soil that we're used to dig out of that, we're going to use to make the berm to allow the water to collect. We put in about a 2 to 3 inch layer of soil on top. Then we put our plants in, and there's 3 different zones in a rain garden, and we'll talk about that. But this is going to allow all that water to run in, collect, and then go through. And could it overflow? Sure. If we have a big enough rain event, yes, it could overflow, but we're going to fill it, and the overflow is going to be gentler, and then allow that water still to try to infiltrate as it goes through the rest of our yard. I hope that makes sense for everybody. But what are our source? Well, we're going to use rain. We're going to collect it off of any hard surface. We're going to send it to where we want it to go. That can be hard to do, but if we position our rain garden in the right spot in our yard, it's already going to be coming at us. And you can also use a rainwater harvest system with this and collect the rainwater harvesting into the rainwater system, and then have that overflow into the rain garden, and get double bang for your buck, if that makes sense. So it's pretty simple. You can see in the top picture where it is, how it's kind of kidney shaped, and the planting. The bottom one, it's already fully planted and developed, but you can see how the water would run in and it would fill up, and they've got the walkway so that the overflow goes under the walkway. So it still gives you a collection point with a spot for it to run into. This is what I wish more of our development in our cities would look at doing, would be, instead of having those green patches with the trees in the middle, do a rain garden system through there. You don't have to do as much maintenance. Uh, it's more aesthetically pleasing, and it's gonna take care of that water instead of right now. Most of those, they have the trees and stuff in there, and then all that water runs into the stormwater system. This is going to allow it to take and run through. And it's pretty simple. In different areas, you can do stuff like this, and the water is going to collect in there, in the rocks, and in the underneath all that mulch, and you're not going to see it. You're not going to worry about it. This would be another one for more of our bigger developments, but you can see that there would be an overflow into the stormwater system, but the majority of the water is going to get collected and used through there. And then this is one from, I believe this was from overseas. Dottie had gotten this for us when she put this together. And a lot of these are being used in other countries. We just need to start making it more known to our people in charge so that they can make the changes to our planning and stuff that way. Put it into those planning areas. And then this is just a large rain garden. All these grasses and the trees, it just looks aesthetically pleasing in that area, and you would never even know until you get out into the middle of that there would have been water in there at one point, and that water is now below ground for those plants to use. So when we're talking about rain gardens, we got to look at the feasibility at our property. When I was in Bear County, I went out and we walked through a gentleman's yard, and he was talking about having problems with excessive amount of water coming through every time it rained. He was losing soil, and he was putting stuff back in, and we talked about building a rain garden, and we found a spot that was perfect in his yard, and we talked about putting it in, and he sent me information after he did it, and it was taking care of a lot of his issues, and his plants were now, he was able to establish a garden that was working for him. And he was very happy with the information, but we had to look around his yard and find the right spot to put it in, because we don't want to have to pump water to it. We don't want to have to force the water to go to an area. We want to collect it and have it come into that area for us. And we're going to have to do some planning on finding the right level. What is our depth? It's just a lot of things to think about when you're putting it in. But you can see it's
Troy,
kidney
I have
shaped.
a
And
question
that
for
is,
you.
yes.
So when we're talking about the right location, like what type of soil needs to be underneath it? Is it better if it is soil, or like what if it's hard rock, or is there a difference in that?
Well, what we did out here is when we started digging ours, we only had an inch of soil. We scraped that
That's
off
kind
and
of
we
what we
got
were thinking,
to,
yeah.
yeah, and so we ended up hitting the limestone that's underneath us. We got the equipment, we broke it up, we dug the hole. When we had the hole dug out and I was standing in it, well, I'll show some pictures. We ended up having to go a little deeper than what we'd wanted to originally go. So we went 8 to 12 inches deep, which worked out better for us. But then you're going to put in that 3 to 6 to 8 inches of pea gravel, depending on how deep your hole is. 2/3 of it should be pea gravel. Then 1/3 of it should be good garden soil that you can grow your plants in, because you got to establish the plants in something.
Mm-hmm.
And then that soil can come up to meet in with the native soil on your berm.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is that's going to allow that infiltration through the soil into that pea gravel, and that pea gravel is going to be your aquifer to allow that water then to slowly infiltrate into the system, but also allow those plants to have access to water. Does that and kind of
That
answer that question?
that totally does. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, because this is, I know, like I said, in Bear County, it was one way. Out here, I mean, we're fighting limestone. It's just limestone, limestone, limestone. So sometimes maybe our best bet is going to be that we're going to build up. So we're going to build a berm and then collect the water and use that what we have naturally. We're just going to fill in on top of it and allow it to infiltrate down through and slow it that way, depending on how much you want to break up the rock underneath yours. It can be challenging. We also want to make sure that we're maintaining about 3 feet away from our house. And that is just because we don't want it to back up or overfill. And if we got it too close to the house, then we're going to force it up into the foundation and cause problems that way. If we had big established trees, we don't want to mess with them too much so that we drown them or do damage with them. So we got to think about where we're putting it. We got to have slope because the water's got to be able to run to this. We don't want it to be uphill from where everything's running. And then, like it says in here, views from the house and the road. That really depends on your point of view. For me, having it in an area, when there's water in there, it's not super attractive, but that water is gone in 24 hours. And then you have plants that are using that water to produce flowers and stuff for us. So to me, it's a beautiful garden. And maybe we want to look at it more from our living room than we do from the bedroom side of the house, if that makes sense. And then existing landscape, we're just going to have to make it work and put our landscape together however is going to work best for us. So this is 10 feet from a structure foundation. I say sit 3 to 6 feet from your house. Like I said, you just don't want it to back up and cause issues with your foundation that way. But you can see in this one, you can see how the depth for the amount of water that they're collecting that she is standing in compared to where they are standing up on the garden or on the parking structure that way. Location. It's hard to figure out sometimes where to put these. We want to have sunlight. Obviously, we need sunlight for our plants to grow. We're not going to grow a shade garden. Those plants just don't use the water as much as our plants that are out in the sun. And we want some pre-treatment for our rain garden. So you want to, it's all, and that's kind of a hard thing to fit. Location is what we need to figure out the best thing to do. Views from the house. Remember, when the plants get tall, at their mature height, what are we going to see? Well, what's the view going to look like? And we want to incorporate what we already have because there's less time, less money in that for the building of this. So our slope, any slope over 12 degrees, a rain garden really isn't going to work. You're going to have to have something else. But that 12-degree slope is that's pretty steep. 2 to 3% is probably about a normal grade for most people, where they're going to be putting in a typical rain garden in your landscape. But so this is what we're going to start thinking about. We're going to try to get that get everything working so we get that 6 inches of depth. And we're just going to take out the old surface. We're going to use that to as much of that to build the berm as possible. This is the typical part for most of us. Is it's the hard thing, trying to pound a stake in to be able to figure out what your slope is may be tough. It may not be tough. You may have already figured it out because you've been in the yard working on stuff. Now, if we're going greater than 8%, or you have a large area, you're going to want to go, instead of having that 6 inches, you're going to want to have at the very depth of it is going to be about 12 inches deep, but 8 inches is where we're going to fill that in for our 8 inches of pea gravel and soil. Okay, so we go in and we dig out our depth, we put in our aggregate, and then we put in our plants and stuff as we are building. Remember, we want soil to infiltrate and percolate. We want it to go down. As much of that water to go down as we can get it. How far does it have to go? Does the water have to move from the downspout? And then you can see when we're talking about how much water we're going to collect, because that's going to depend on how big this rain garden is we're going to build. You can see how to put that into your gallons of water. Basically, 1,000 square feet will give you 623 gallons of water. 2,000 square feet is about 1,200 gallons per 1,246 gallons of water. So how many cubic feet do you need to have to be able to do that water? Well, then we would divide that, say the 600 by 7.48, and that would tell us how many cubic feet we would need. Can be very complicated. If you need help with this, you can give us a call here at the office, and we can sit on the phone and talk about it, or chat through email, and I will help you figure this out if it works if you need help that way. So these recommended depths, it really depends on how much water you're really needing to collect. You may only have a 3% slope, but you may need 8 inches of depth because of the amount of water that is coming down to your property. That's the problem we had out here at the extension office, is we were having a lot of water come in and off the property just to the south of us uphill, and it was coming up and would wash out our gardens. So we put in the dry river bed in this huge redneck hot tub looking rain garden that fills up to the top every time we get 2 to 3 inches of rain or more off that property. And within 24 to 48 hours, it's gone. You don't see the water in the rain garden anymore. The plants are using it and they're loving it. A lot of information to think about when you're talking about your soil and everything. We know that our soil, we sit probably right in here. If you have soil, there's clay. Whether it is clay loam or silty clay, or it's just straight clay, it is clay. And that's good for us for building the berm. It's bad for us when we want the water to go down, because in clay soil it goes left and right instead of up and down. If we were in poteet, in that red sand, it would run up and down, and we would have to add clay. Um, for us, building the berm is great because we have the clay to help build the berm. We have to put good sandy loam soil in to allow that water to move through it and down into the storage area that we're building underneath. So in this setup, the way everything worked, the water was running from left to right. So the best placement for the rain garden was down in that corner to allow that water all to be caught there before it ran off down the driveway and that way. So that is where we would decide to build it. Here we had, this was, I believe, one of my clients in Bear County. They were having an issue. They'd put in this dry riverbed because the water from the property would come down and it was just rushing through this area and washing it out. So they put in a dry riverbed, and they're like, this isn't making any sense. It's still all running down. We just don't have the erosion. So this, believe it or not, is actually a rain garden. The water runs down, and you can see it actually runs in this way to be able to take care of it. And that helped change a lot of their issues. So we need to think about plant choice, how deep, how tall, the mature size, soil amendments, and location. I think I've beat this. It's a dead horse. We've talked about all this a lot already. Can you do a shade rain garden? Yes. It just, the water's not going to purpose through there as quickly because of the type of plants that you're going to use. This was a client of Dottie's up in Dallas area. This was always overfilling. It was like basically a ditch. The water would run down into the ditch, and they would say the mailman and the kids would have to walk through water on this side of the street because it would overflow. So they made a rain garden, and all of a sudden they didn't have the flooding in the street that they had previously. So took care of that problem. Another rain garden, you can put it in, you can set them up on both sides and have basically an overflow through the center. But this homeowner, it worked for them in this area, and for their planting, just to put it in on both sides with an overflow down the center. So sizing factors. Really, it's the amount of water that's coming in to your property that you need to take care of. So a lot of this is, we sit in this area. It's really going to depend how much water we're trying to take care of, really. In our soil, nothing's going to go deep very quickly. It's going to go left and right. So that's going to increase our size of our rain garden that we need to build. A lot of this, if you need help, contact me out here and we'll walk you through it. But typically a rain garden is twice as wide as it is, or twice as long as it is wide. So that means it's going to be twice this way, lengthwise, as it is this way, so that the water coming in hits the berm and goes left and right instead of lengthwise or widthwise towards the house. We want it in front and along the house. That's how we do that kidney shape. So that gives us our length to our width. Really, size and shape depends on your property and what your landscaping and stuff looks like, because we may have to make it more of a teardrop shape because you have a big mature tree on both sides and we're trying to do it that way. But this is not a pond. This water is not going to be standing for long periods of time. So the only mosquitoes we have to worry about are those that are going to get into the vegetation and do stuff. And that we're going to have anyways, because we're going to have that vegetation, whether we have it um, in our planting or not. So, small rain garden, if that's all the space you have, but you've got an area where it's collecting because of walkways and hard surfaces, it works. I don't know if that tree was already there. This was a picture Dottie put together for us before she retired, but it works, and you can see it looks beautiful there, right? You wouldn't think that was a rain garden, but it is. It helps them help them take care of it. A native rain garden. Nature does this in areas where it collects and then it drops through. Some of it we call dry creek beds, or they're stormwater creeks. They only fill up when we get a lot of rain, but there's plants in there that survive in certain environments and in certain parts of that rain garden or that garden separately. This is in Washington, D.C. Dottie was there for a conference. Beautiful, right? Menard High School, Billy Niffen helped them set up rain gardens to take care of the runoff off of the school and to put it back into the native system, and helps teach the kids. That's a good teaching area now for the kids to go out and learn about water cycle and how water works through the system, and our plants use it. And then we're putting, obviously with conservation, we're putting less into the stormwater system to help everything that way. So soil compaction. We need the soil or the water to be able to move up and down because we need it to infiltrate and percolate through the ground. Out here we had to use a jackhammer, and if that's a Janet, I think it is, that's on here. If she was here as one of our secretaries at the time, she remembers the house was shaking, and then all of a sudden they broke that piece of limestone and it stopped, and the shaking stopped. But we pulled a lot of stone out, we broke it up, and it works. Are you going to want to do that at your property? Are you going to have to rent the equipment to do that at your property? Maybe we need to look in a different area to put it. The berm, if you didn't have clay soil, we'd have to use clay you'd have to get some delivered. We should have plenty of clay when you scrape that off. Our native soils are very clay intense. And we want to try to have as gentle a slope as possible so that we don't have the water rushing in and then it rushes in and runs over the berm that way. Vegetation. It's going to help hold the soil in place. It's going to help with the water absorption. And it's going to give us the height, the fragrance, the bloom, and the color. And just remember that some of the plants are going to have to tolerate standing in water for a period of time and having their roots in a wet zone when they're in the bottom of our rain garden. This was one that Billy was helping his master gardeners work on. You can see they dug out the pit. They mended the soil so that instead of having some brought in, they just used the soil that they did, put in some compost and everything and amended into it. They put it back in after they put pea gravel down at the base. This was one Dottie helped them work on up in Dallas area. You can see everything here with the stormwater drain. Can you see the stormwater drain now? It's about right there behind those tall plants, but you can see that this area now will use that water instead of it just standing there for long periods of time. This was another one, Master Gardener project. You can see everything was running off of the road and down this way, and you've got the planting beds there, so they needed to stop the water that way. So this is what happens when the water comes in now. It still backs up a little bit, but that's slowly going to fill in and work through. You can see this is their overflow area where it allows a little extra to run out. Another one, you can see the scupper off the house comes down and runs in. This is going to allow it to go through that way. Collection system off of school. Now, it's a test hole, and something you're going to want to see. If this water stands for too long, we need to amend that soil to allow it to move up and down, or we have a pond. We want that to, like we said, if we dig this hole 6 inches, we want it to go below 3 inches in 24 hours. So that if it's moving down like that, it will allow it to slowly percolate down through the system, and we'll have some up and down movement. So then you're going to lay your line, and you're going to dig your proper depth. You can see they're standing in the middle so that they get the depth, and you can see the berm right here running around that area. They put cloth on and stuff on there. You don't have to. That's going to help until you get the plants established. We used mulch on ours. You plant, add your mulch, and then you're going to water until you get these established. Once they're established, you're going to be good to go. You can see that sometimes, this is the city of Tucson, Arizona. They do a lot of this out in the western U.S. just because of the way it is, and this gives them a way to control their rainwater runoff. But are you going to use one, or are you going to need to use a series of them? I've actually helped build one where we built a series of 3. Just because we couldn't build the size in that way.
Hello.
So we couldn't go left and right deep enough to accommodate the water, so we did multiples, and then the overflow ran down that way. This is how we built you can see we'd started off, we used a small tractor out here. We got through a little bit and we got into this. So our road department, we got in contact with them, and they came over. And this is what you can see, I think that is one of our volunteers standing, and you can see that was the first layer we went down. That was probably 6 inches. Well, we needed at least 8 to 10 to get our proper depth. So we went down even deeper, and you can see that this is the soil and the rock they were pulling out. We had dry riverbed, but it didn't have the rock and stuff in it. It's deep, so we did that. This is our back of our property line. The water runs in off of that. It used to run in, go over this berm, and flood our gardens. There's enough slope, it runs down from, this is our other corner of our property, and this runs towards our cattle barns. So it runs down. You can see we put some baffle rocks in there to help slow it down. We actually make it turn a corner. We use some of the big rocks to turn a corner. You can see this is where we had to pea gravel in, and the depth that we're in. This is here, there's probably 2 inches. Over here, over in this area, we had probably 6 inches of pea gravel. We used 5 yards of pea gravel to fill this up to a level where we were happy with. So we've got about 8 right now in here. We had about, I think 8 inches of depth to play with. for extra water holding because of the amount we got. And then I never took a picture of what it looked like afterwards. I meant to have added that. Let me go back a slide. So then what we did is we put 3 inches of soil on top of this, and we planted our plants. You got the wet zone. On this side, coming up to the top of the berm, you have a medium zone of some moisture sometimes, sometimes dry. And on the top running out, your plants are going to be in a dry zone. So they're going to have to be able to tolerate long periods without a lot of water.
Hey, Troy,
Okay.
somebody did comment that we can't see your mouse on your screen right now for some reason. So when you said the dry side and the wet side, like was that the top or the bottom?
The wet side is the inside of the rain garden,
Okay.
and the dry side is the outside of the berm running out to your native landscape.
Okay.
Or
Awesome.
your yard or whatever that way. So when you're looking at it from the outside running in, if I'm in my yard, we run to the dry zone to the middle of the berm. When we get to the middle of the top of the berm, that's your dry side. This is coming down into your berm to your rain garden. This is the medium side, because obviously you're going to have water that's going to get up here and at that point. So they're going to have water a little more often than these are. And then down in this area is your wet part of your rain garden, where those plants are going to tolerate water on their roots for periods of time. And we're going to select plants so we don't get diseases, cotton root rot, stuff that way. And we can get you help with a list of plants that work with that. And we have them divided up into our zones. Some plants work in all 3. Some plants work in just one. It really all depends. But you're going to just put in different your muley grasses work very well with that. Irises tolerate a lot of that very well. Asters, these work very well on both sides of your berm. And plus they give you asters and goldenrod, if you can get them going, your wildlife, if you like butterflies and that to come, and bees and pollinators to come around, you will have plenty of that in your rain garden. The swamp rose, well, this is more for up in Dallas. I don't know if we grow swamp rose down here, but there are rock rose and some other those that work very well, and they tolerate a little more moisture. Blue sage, all our sages work very well on the medium side, coming up and in, as well as being in the rain garden itself. This is prairie verbena. I believe this is better on the outside. Your sundrop flowers on the inside. Okay, so can everybody see? We're having a rainstorm and we're having runoff, and it runs off down through our system, and we get a lot of evaporation, very little infiltration. So with our rain garden, comes down, we fill up our cistern. The cistern slowly drains into the rain garden and fills that up, and we get a lot more infiltration and a lot less evaporation, and that way. So this is just what we can do to add it in as another layer of our rainwater harvesting. Like I said, you will need to do some watering, whether you put in drip irrigation to water in the middle of summer, or whether you just hand water. We hand water if we water at all. We use a lot of plants that are adapted to the drought conditions we get during those times, and they've all come back. Now I wished I would have got more of pictures of what ours looks like here. I also helped Master Gardeners do this at one of our schools. And they were having a flooding issue, and it was bad. The water, because of the landscape and where they put in a walkway, actually was flooding one of the teachers' classrooms. And one of my master gardeners came to me, and I helped them figure out the size. Her husband came in and dug it out, filled in everything, and they planted it. And since they had put that rain garden in, that teacher's classroom has been dry, and the maintenance guys like it because there's less work for them to do. So it's a win-win. I mean, they had 2 big downspouts that come in and filled up this area. And we just took care of that water issue by putting it through the natural water cycle instead of doing stuff that way. So this is all based on a rainwater harvesting book that you can go to the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. If you put in AgriLife bookstore, the AgriLife bookstore will come up, and you can put in this L5482, and you can download a PDF of a lot of technical stuff about rain gardens. What it won't tell you is what plants to plant. And that's because each area of Texas is a little different. That's the beauty of Texas. We have so many different environments that we can adapt a lot of plants into different areas and do some wonderful things with it. So if you have questions, that's my email address. You can send me an email, and I can email you a copy of the PDF form that we have for rain gardens. I think I might even have this book in my hard drive, and I can send that to you in a PDF. And we can talk for flowers and location after this time, after our great adventures indoors ends. We can turn around and I can come out and we can do a site visit, and I can help you. But we can do that over email chats. We can do that over different social media things that we could do now. If you contact me and you have an iPhone, we could FaceTime, and you could FaceTime with me, and we could do a virtual walkthrough. We can do a thing like this with Zoom, where I could set it up, and you could use your camera to talk with me that way. We have another one called Microsoft Teams. You don't need to put anything on your computer. I can send you a link, and we can, with an iPhone, and you can turn your camera, and we can do a lot of virtual stuff. So I don't want anybody to think that right now we couldn't do anything where I could help you if you wanted to do something with this. I'm here. I'm at work. If I'm not at work, I'm at home, but I have my phone on me 24 hours a day. My wife gets mad at me for it, but I love this job. I love helping my clientele. Everything from this morning, I was out in a wheat field looking at disease, and we're trying to figure that out, to trying to help 4-H families figure out if they're going to do livestock projects this year. Then I came back, and we're talking with master gardeners about plants and aphids and insects and stuff that way. So I never have 2 same days. So any questions, I'd be glad to open up. Tell me how I did. I hope you learned something from this. I hope it was very timely information with all the rain we've had lately. But this would be another aspect into water conservation and making our landscape, helping our landscape work for us instead of fighting with our landscape to try to make it do what we want it to do. we have to learn to grow with the environment we're in and make the plants and everything work that way. So any questions, please unmute, go ahead and ask, and I'll gladly answer them because I'm sure there'll be more than one person that'll have that same question.
Thank you, Troy.
Okay. Thank you. Was it helpful?
Yes, sir.
Good. Good.
And I've unmuted everyone. If y'all want to just ask questions, you don't have to click anything now. So. Troy, is there any plants that would work very well in our area for this rain garden that that are, you know, on quotation, deer proof, not just something that we could actually plant, or were those that you were talking about?
Rosemary.
Okay.
You can get ornamental rosemary. For some reason, the deer do not seem to or want to eat that very much. Lantana. It's a very low choice part for us. Honestly, we put in a lot of stuff that we thought the deer were going to eat on us, and we haven't had issues with the deer. Muley grass, deer, that's a very low choice browse for them, and muley grass works in all aspects of the rain garden. You can, most of your ornamental bunch grasses can tolerate being wet for a period of time because they grow deep roots. The deeper you have, the deeper your rain garden is, the deeper your root system will be for your muley grasses and your bunch grasses, and the taller they will get. So that can be a very, very good thing, especially as you plant them on the coming up to the berm of your rain garden, and where the water comes in, it's going to slow it down with those big bunch grasses, and then it's not going to do as much damage to the beautiful flowers you have in the middle. But yeah, a lot of them, I mean, when the deer are hungry, they're going to eat what they want to eat. So we just kind of have to work with it.
Awesome. Thank you. Deborah said, thanks for the presentation, Troy. Very helpful.
Well, good. I'm glad this works. If there's more topics that you guys can think of, get a hold of Bethany or myself, and we can put something else together during this time. It's a way to get information out there. It is a way to put purpose back in our times. I know my wife is really struggling with being at home and trying to figure stuff out. Luckily, I get a break from the day and get to come in here and do stuff with this, and this gets to help that way. So I hope you have time to work in your gardens. I hope you have time to figure some stuff out. And if you have questions or things that you would like to hear some more information about, please get a hold of us, and we will get something together and get some more educational information out there for everybody to use in their landscape or whatever other topic you might have. Believe me, I can probably put something together for you if there's something that is interesting to you and is probably interesting to a lot of other people.
Hey Troy, it's Christy. How about slope maintenance? I know you did a class on soil erosion, but like landscaping on slopes. The property here is full of hills, and sometimes it's not, I can't build a berm on some of those, like you said, if the slope is too steep.
Right. If your slope if you have that steep of a slope, or if we can get the water to stop before it really gets too steep, that would be where we'd want to build it so that we can prevent the water from rushing down the rest of it and eroding the soil that way. So if we can stop it at a certain point, or we can change the direction it's coming off of our house to do it that way. But slope maintenance is an issue, and really we have to play with that kind of site by site, because some of them there's just nothing we can do with. It would take an engineering feat to build it. And I know because I've talked to one of our other master gardeners, Stephen Granger, has done some of that stuff at his property, and it has taken him years to build some of the soil erosion stuff he's got going on out there because of the slope he has. And he just did it because he's an ex-engineer and it gave him something to do and he loved being outside.
But I've worked with like the coconut fiber, like what they use along the roads.
Yep.
But if you're not patient enough, that netting gets wrapped up into things. So I got something from the Native Seed Company that doesn't have the netting. So we'll see how that works.
Okay. And another thing you could do is, depending on the slope and if you can get it to work, use some mulch and make areas where the water will have to slow down a little bit. If you can find a spot where if the water, the slope kind of comes down and then hits a point where it has to slow down a little bit before it slopes again, and you can put some mulch in that area and slow it down, that mulch will start working and create soil for you and build a rain garden of sense that way for you. I mean, we did that at Camp Bullis on some of their slope. We just shredded a bunch of stuff and we put it in, and we actually found out that was the best method of land conservation, because it allowed a lot of native grasses and stuff to come back in areas where it had been washed out before.
Oh, okay.
Does that help, Christy?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you, Troy. I know I learned a lot, so I never get to stay and listen to your classes, so I have a reason this time.
Well, it's just, to me, that I love doing this, but it's hard to. This is a new learning experience. I like to be able to interact with everybody and see their faces right away. So
It's interesting.
Cool.
Joe Scott just did his soils class, and we had a lot more interaction on it. And I mean, you're a very approachable guy. I don't know, maybe you're just doing such a good job. Nobody wanted to stop you, but that was very good.
This is a very technical topic compared to soil. It's a lot more. I mean, you could be an engineer to figure some of this stuff out. I'm not. I guess I'm a redneck engineer. I just play with it until I make it work for me.
I'm like, I might have to get your booklet. My husband is an engineer, and we have several spots we need to do this on. So I feel like he might have fun with it.
Yeah. No, this can definitely work that way, and just let me know. I'll send it to you with all our stuff, and he can read through, and it may
Yeah.
become a good project for him during this time.
Yeah, he has several going in our yard right now, so very good. All right, Troy. Well, I guess if nobody has any questions, we can close it out and stop our recording and all that. But thank you so much, Troy, for doing this, and we appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you all for coming today, and stay safe.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, everyone.